If you want to understand what it means to refuse to quit, do not look at motivational posters. Do not look at highlight reels or comeback speeches or the perfectly framed moment when someone crosses a finish line. Look at a mountain goat on a cliff face. Look at the specific, unhurried, completely unspectacular business of an animal doing something impossible without knowing it is impossible, because nobody told it and it never asked. The mountain goat's hoof is a biological engineering achievement that most people walk past without knowing exists. The outer edge is hard and sharp for gripping the rock. The inner pad is soft for friction. The two halves of the split hoof move independently, allowing each side to adjust to uneven surfaces in real time. The goat does not look down. The goat does not assess whether the next ledge looks promising. The goat simply moves to the next available surface and trusts the hoof to do what it was built to do. This particular story is about one goat, not the strongest in the herd, not the largest. A smaller animal with one front leg that had been injured earlier in the season. Healed, functional, but not quite what it was. Who fell behind the herd as they navigated a steep section of the mountain above the tree line. The hikers who witnessed this had been watching the herd move up the cliff face with the specific board competence that mountain goats bring to vertical surfaces. Then the group moved on, and this goat was left at the base of the hardest section. Alone, the goat began to climb. Its first placement was uncertain. The injured leg finding the surface a half-second slower than the other three, the balance adjusting, the body compensating in real time for the difference. It slipped. Not far. A few inches, a scramble. The hooves finding purchase again before the slip became a fall. The goat did not pause to assess the slip. It had already moved to the next placement. The slip was simply a data point, incorporated and continued past. The hikers stopped walking. One of them said later that she had not decided to stop. She had simply noticed, at a certain point, that she was no longer moving because the goat had become more important than the trail. They stood in a group, none of them speaking, watching the small animal with the compromised leg work its way up a surface that the healthy goats ahead of it had already cleared without ceremony. Halfway up the section, the goat fell. Not a slip this time, a fall. Several feet, landing on a ledge below, the impact visible in the way the body absorbed it. The hikers made the sound people make when they watch something fall. And then they watched the goat stand. And then they watched it begin climbing again from the new position. Immediately, without any visible interval between the landing and the resuming, the fall had happened. The climbing was what was happening now. What the hikers noticed was not the falls. They noticed the space between the falls. The goat did not rest between attempts. It did not take a moment to recover its confidence, or reassess the route, or wonder whether the top was worth the cost of the bottom. It simply continued, the injured leg finding its placement a half-second behind the others. The body adjusting. The next ledge approached. The next surface tested. The next placement made without drama, without ceremony, without any apparent awareness that what it was doing was difficult. The herd was visible at the top. Some of them had turned to look back at the lone goat below. Not waiting exactly, not in the way of animals that have a concept of waiting, but present and turned. And the goat below did not look up at them. It did not look at the distance remaining, or the height already covered, or the position of the herd that had gone before. It looked at the next available surface. That was all that was required. The next surface. And then the one after that. The final section was the steepest. The injured leg was working at the limit of what it could offer. The body was compensating through the other three in a way that anyone who understood goat biomechanics would have recognized as significant effort. The kind of effort that looks from the outside like ordinary movement, and is, from the inside, the full deployment of everything available. The goat did not slow. It was not going fast, but it did not slow. The goat reached the top. It did not pause there. It did not look back at what it had climbed, or around at the hikers below, or at the view the height offered. It completed the last placement and moved forward to where the herd was, because the herd was where it was going, and it was now there, and the going continued. The arrival was simply the next step in the direction it had been moving. Not a conclusion, a continuation. One of the hikers sat down on a rock, not because she was tired, because the goat had reached the top, and something in watching it do that had required her to sit down. She said later, when telling the story, that she had been in the middle of a period when she had been talking herself out of something every day for 3 months. A project, a decision, the specific kind of thing that requires you to begin before you know if you can finish. And the goat had climbed the section, and she had needed to sit down. The herd moved on across the mountain. The goat that had fallen and climbed and fallen and climbed moved with them. It did not know it had taught anyone anything. It had no awareness of the hikers below, or of the woman who needed to sit down, or of the 3 months of talking herself out of something that was about to change direction, because of an animal on a cliff face that fell and got up and continued, without taking a moment in between to decide whether continuing was worth it. The goat simply went where goats go, up and over and on. The lesson was something the watchers made. The goat just climbed.